Thank you for joining me today. It's a pleasure always to be in your home to talk about Guyana economics and where we are at today, where we were, and where we are going or not. Guyana, as you know, over the last 2 years, within the last year and a half, has changed administration. Many were excited about the previous economic plan, where the country was, where it was going, the transformation projects, for example, the PPP had put in place. We went through a scenario of many of the opposition at the time, the current government, disagreement with many of the projects, including energy, including tourism, including modernization of the industries. They protested, they tried to stop these projects. They won power. Many of us believe that that wasn't a fair and free election, but we're moving on. And as we think through where Guyana economic status is today, I want to discuss with you where I believe we're at, the things that need to be done, and as, for example, the PPP administration, PPP party looked to regain power at some point. It's not about taking power or wanting to be government. Literally what we believe is the fact that without an economic vision for a nation, without the right economic plans, without the right leadership, without the right team, Guyana will not move forward. We have seen, and this is not an opposition at the time here, I'm saying we have not done well. The fact that in the last year and a half, it's the second year of this administration, Guyana economy is what I call flatline. And when you get a flat line in your heart rate, you call 911. And we're seeing the people of our nation feeling that brunt of the economic internal pressures that are facing our nation. I saw President Granger on the airplane recently, and I sat next to him. And he asked me what are my thoughts about the economics, and I told him it's going nowhere. What I believe starts with a lack of an economic plan is a lack of vision. What you've seen in the last year and a half, whether it's the Minister of Finance, whether it's the President of Guyana, there has not been a single economic direction, single economic vision put to us as the people of our nation. I believe when President Granger appointed Minister of Finance, he hired basically an accountant. He wants that accountant to protect the money. When you protect the money, then if I need $100 million to build Durban Park, I ask my accountant, do I have enough money in the bank to build Durban Park? Absolutely. But in order to make money as a businessman and a politician, I believe you've got to hire an investment banker. An investment banker then looks at the risk of your money, look at where you can invest and where you can make money in the future. In the previous administration, many risks were taken to make sure that we get to the next level. And I'll give you some examples. Many of us sit at the stadium today and watch cricket. But that was a risk at the time. President Jagdeo at the time said, we need a stadium in Guyana. World Cup was coming up in 2007. He took a risk, got the funding and the finance, and built that stadium. Today we're enjoying that stadium. And it's the only stadium we have in Guyana for cricket. Now that's a small example. If you think of the Berbice Bridge, many said the Berbice Bridge shouldn't have been built. We should have built it somewhere else. We should have got roll-on ferries. We should have done many other things. But again, our current opposition leader, former president, said, we need a bridge to across the Berbice River. Took the risk, got the funding, on the controversy, whatever you may have read, but the fact the bridge is built. Now you can get to quarantine within 3 hours. Before it took an entire day, and we talked about many times in the past about what I call transport economics. With transport economics now, you can get your goods from market to the port faster. If you had to spend all day traveling on the ferry with the truck driver sitting there for 2 hours, 3 hours, paying them, not making any money, you're losing as a business person, and the country loses economic turnover money because of no transport system. The bridge was built. That's the risk was taken. It made it happen. Many other plans. We believe that the Amalia Falls project was the single most critical project that could have ever happened in the nation. Many, probably including myself in the past, may have disagreed at the time, the timing, but the fact is, when you look at the external pressures facing our nation, without cheaper energy, we cannot make progress in our nation. We have a lot of raw materials. With that raw materials, we've got to turn it into value-added products. With value-added products, you have to now have cheaper energy. When you see cheaper stones coming into our country, it's because, you know, the fact that when we produce our goods, it costs more. So it's cheaper to bring in stones from Suriname. It's cheaper to bring in pepper sauce from Chile, or even goods from Chile or Dominican Republic into our country, because the cost of our production is high because of cheaper energy. So you have a current government, while in the opposition disagreed, they get into power, but yet have zero plans. But we are feeling the pain. The flat line that is happening in our nation is there. You just have to travel around the country. I was in Wakenham yesterday, and you look at the faces of people, and you look at the industries that have disappeared. What happens next? So they invest the confidence around from the outside now. You look at the external pressures. We've got the issue with Venezuela. This government stirred up it even more than it was before. Now those pressures are affecting us. Venezuela now is not doing well on an economic standpoint. So that pressure is going to affect the region. Suriname is also collapsing. That pressure will affect Guyana. So we now, with all of the programs that we were going to put in place to ensure the external pressures tied to the internal pressures were balanced out, to make sure that our people do not suffer, has now been put on hold. So when people say the PPP needs to get back in government or wants to get back in the government, I believe they have to get back in government, because the economic plans needs to be put back in place. We believe the Amalia Falls project got to get off the run. We are now 2-3 years behind. Every year this government fails to take one of the transformation projects and gets it done, it puts our country behind. Good example, sugar is down 30%. Well, we have predicted that sugar alone in Guyana cannot sustain because of sugar prices around the world. And I've always said many times, as you get wealthier, as you become more developed, you eat less sugar. But the fact is, we had put in place a plan to move not just from basic sugar, but from more refined sugar, you know, the high-end crystals that are selling at higher cost. We were moving to the ethanol plan for this 5 years, where we would have moved from just sugar to grow more sugar cane. So no sugar worker would have been out of a job. Actually, we would have needed more sugar workers, because we would have moved to ethanol. We know that Brazil is the second largest producer of ethanol in the world. So the more we produce, we would have tied to their market, and Guyana would have improved. With something like ethanol, for example, you would have gone to UG and you would have studied engineering, and you studied chemistry, and you would have had higher paying jobs. But again, that's a significant plan that this government has just dropped. The dream of oil, and I'll get to the dream of oil. Absolutely, I believe under the PP government, they reinitiated the Exxon discovery, ensured that Exxon had the right concessions, the right approach to come into the country. Oil was found prior to the 2015 election, and the next level needed to be put in place. What this current administration now is saying, hey, we have oil, we don't need to do anything else, we'll make a lot of money off of oil. Let me tell you, Exxon will hype that discovery as long as they can hype it, because it increases their stock price in the US, and it's more money for their stock shareholders. They may never, or may have a lengthy time when they decide to extract that oil. Maybe the oil prices in 5 years, 6 years may not be at a point where it's worth the investment to extract the oil. So there are many external factors that we cannot wait just simply for the oil discovery to happen. I'm excited. I think it's a great thing for our nation that we can become an oil producing nation. But again, without the vision and the understanding of what that industry would do for our nation and where it will take us, you are just sitting on a dream pie, hanging on to the fact that you believe that oil will happen in a short period of time. So the vision of our country, with the sugar market down, we've got to look again, growing more sugar. Let's produce ethanol. That's in our PPP version 2.0. We talked significantly of where those critical components going to need to happen. Another risk factor that I believe happened in Guyana in the last 2 years that people disagreed with, even the president, there's a picture of him protesting in front of the Marriott Hotel, saying, shut it down, don't build it. Look at what it is today, one of the most beautiful structure in our nation. And what did the Marriott do for Guyana? An investor, a foreign investor, coming into our country, knowing that a Marriott is in our nation, just the confidence of that investor makes a difference. The president, I think at the time as the opposition leader, said we should make it into a hospital. Now today, I think they realize you shut that down, you just bring Guyana back to another halt. They now believe they need to expand the other entertainment center with casino. They have to. Guyana needs certain infrastructure criteria in order to create an external market that the investors then would say, we're stable. This government has scared away foreign investors. Our investor level of confidence is down. When you go after the Chinese, when you go after pulling concessions, when you do it in such a brutal manner, without looking at the agreements, without understanding what was the decision point when the PPP administration was in the seat, what was the reason why certain concession had to be given based on where the economic status of our nation was, you don't come in and reverse. Because if that is a trend, what happens? Every 5 years, if you change government, no investor wants to come in and know in 5 years your concession would be pulled. So the opposition leader, President Jagdeo, has basically said, you cannot take those risks and take away the investor point of decision making at that time. You can look at future agreements, but going after the Chinese is one of the biggest investors around the world. We need them in our country. 750,000 of us, no matter how smart, how great, how intelligent, how much hard working, cannot take 83,000 square miles and make it into a nation that will sustain and make us all at a better level. England is under 83,000 miles, Great Britain. They're not even that large, they've got 22 plus million people. So we need that level of investment coming into our country. We shouldn't be going after the Chinese or any other new entity that come in our country. We should be welcoming them because it adds to our economic direction. It helps make Guyana a broader economics. When we think of all of the technology support that the PPP had put in place, all the call centers, what those things were doing was giving entry-level jobs to many people that may have graduated out of university, cannot get a job, or many that may just have the skill set. It helped improve our lower level income to where they can now work themselves up to higher level paying jobs. We know, going back to sugar, says that sugar is down 30%. And I believe we should have grown more sugar. But now you close the Wales estate, what happens? People are out of jobs. They have not been retrained in any other new jobs. And you're going to grow more rice. Let me tell you, if this government, which has messed up the rice industry, we know that, lost the deal with Venezuela, markets are down, why grow more rice? What is that going to do? Do you have the right markets for rice? In our plan, and I want to reiterate, and I'm not going to give up on letting you know and remind you of what our plan has said. We believe in growing more rice. But we're going to move to value-added products. The testing of a cereal plant in Essequibo. You now eat cereal, many of us eat cereal for breakfast. So the value added of the same raw rice material that we have done for decades in our nation as our core economic pillars can now be added, value added to better paying jobs, better value, more money for our nation. But again, no plans from this government. Close the West States, get rid of the sugar fields, and plant rice, instead of growing more sugar and move to ethanol. What has happened is that I believe the 23 years the administration sat in Parliament, all they had was hype that everything was bad, everything was bad, everything was bad. Now they're in power, they don't know what to do. I post on Facebook, I have my family member that have never been back in Guyana for 37 years. He came back, he left in 1979 at the height of the Guyana Depression, where many Guyanese of all races left their nation under the dictatorship. And he came back after 37 years, and the shock on his face about the transformation of where Guyana was to where Guyana is today just blew his mind. And I posted a picture on Facebook and got a few comments that says, what transformation? Guyana GDP grew to 3 billion from 300 million whatever to 3 billion in 1992 to 2014. From $20-30 GDP per capita to 3,000. You look at the transformation of our system. You look at where our industry at. I watched many people came in for the Jubilee celebration, and they were shocked about where Guyana was. Many said they were free now that they came in, but you had to remind them, they all left under the dictatorship. They all left because Guyana economic status was so bad prior to 1992. They came back and they're all excited, but this current government has not done anything. Everything you see today, apart from the cleanup of Georgetown, the building of Durban Park, has been under the previous administration. You tell me one item, one economic plan that this government has done that has made your life better. 5% increase in public servants. PP have done 8 to 5% over the last 4 or 5 years. So nothing new there. Old age pension was gradually being increased. But the fact that money was flowing in our country, people say it's bad money. We have gone through now the forensic audits and we have not come up with anything that says it was bad money. But what is the true answer of why the economy is flatlined and why it has come to a standstill is the many internal pressures this government has created. So when you tell a businessman, we're going to go after you, we're going to do X, we're going to seize this, we're going to look at that, people get scared. Not that they may be doing anything wrong, but the fact they don't know where they fit now in the economics of our nation. So you start to hoard your money and stop spending your money. You look at the small man, the taxes increases that is happening is creeping up on us. You go to the airport, you used to pay $200 for parking, now you're paying $500. Was there any reason why it needed to be increased? We know UG fees are going up 5%. Was there a plan in place that says, was the fees low or high? And they campaign, the current government campaign on free education for all. And the same people that had the free education that today is in power wants now to have you pay more money for that education. But they are unwilling to create the environment where new jobs will be ready when you graduate from university. It's backwards. You raise the fees, you collapse the economy, you graduate from university, and there's no jobs. Young people that have voted for this government, I think, are so disappointed. And I've been an advocate of young people all my political career. The fact that I believe our generation is not the future. That new generation is our today. Our children, our young people are our today. We've got to take care of them. And the plans that we had put in place was to ensure that jobs continue to be developed in our nation. What happened in the last year and a half? You can answer it as much. A lack of vision, a lack of plan, wasting our taxpayers' money on things that doesn't make a difference in our nation. Creating Durban Park, that money could have gone to building the ethanol plant. An ethanol plant could be done, machinery can be bought, for maybe, a million US or less to get a 50,000 liter production. That money could have gone into that test. That would have created more work. Durban Park is sitting there just for the president to get his salute when he has a big ceremony. I can tell you, I disagree with that completely. As a military man, I wear my medal from the war. The fact is, yes, I agree that those that serve any nation should be respected. But the fact that you don't waste the money on military activities, that doesn't matter. I believe the issue with Venezuela can be resolved in the right way. It's been years and decades. I support the fact that we own our sovereignty, we own our lands. We've got to be able to take it back and keep it, not take it back, it's ours. But you've got to be able to do it in the right way, because we are in a global economy, and we've got to ensure that we don't become a bully when we don't have the resources to be a bully. The fact we've got to go back to the economic vision. Manufacturing is down 14%. Again, when money doesn't flow, and I always tell folks as a businessman, money makes money. Without investment in our nation, without new economies being built, without some of the transformation projects that we believe have to be done these 5 years in order for 2020 vision to be true, is now not going to happen. We still believe and we still ensure, I think President Jagdeo has put many of these planks in Parliament. They got to start listening. We talk a lot about the bridge across the Quarantine River, linking Suriname to Guyana. That was one of our major planks in our campaign. The opposition disagreed and said, that's not something that is important. It's absolutely important, because with Suriname now collapsing from an economic standpoint, imagine if we now can get our goods to that market. We've got a whole new market, maybe to feed Suriname, maybe to provide certain other items that they may need in order for survival. So it increased Guyana economy. In our 2020 plan, we talked too about the road to Brazil and the Deepwater Harbor. We believe those two things have to happen in the first 2 years of a new administration. We didn't get a chance to get that off the ground these 2 years that we talked about, but we have to. Those things need to happen. So every year, each of these plans that I described go backwards. We put ourselves 3-4 years behind. We cannot get to that level at all. We've got to ensure that economic vision for a nation, an economic plan, the right people to manage it, have to come back into play. And I believe with President Jagdeo, as the opposition leader in Parliament, is in the best position to help guide. Many want him back as president, and that may happen at some point. And I believe it may be the right thing for a nation. And it may require that type of leadership for Guyana to move forward. But in the meantime, we have to ensure that the plans that we have put in place under the PP administration, the plans that we have proposed for the 2015 to 2020, to ensure that those transformation projects happen, have to happen. The Amalia Falls, the energy, the biggest single component that has to take place. We've got to then use that energy, if it can come about, to create the new industries we need for a nation. With rice and sugar going, the value-added products that I talk about, rice and sugar, becomes important. The fact that we need to look at the coconut industry. I mentioned many times in the past, Brazil is the second largest or the largest producer of sugarcane in the world. They need as many coconuts as we can provide. But we've got to have that transportation route to northern Brazil to get that level of economic status going between the two nations. So the road has to be done. Have you heard anything about the roads being talked about, money being looked for that to happen? I heard in Suriname they may be able to find an investor to build a bridge across the Quarantine River, and those are programs and initiatives that we had proposed. We talked about the airport many times. The plans for the airport, finally I believe this current government has realized that they've got to do it. They're a year and a half now behind. It's being worked on, but that's our plan. The expansion of the airport is critical for future development of our nation. Not to have nice facilities only, But with that bring investor confidence. It brings investors into our nation. But we've got to look at the tax system. You know, with the increase in taxes that is happening and creeping up, you are paying the worker that gets that pay raise end up paying more taxes because of all these other things that have happened. You're not relying. If you spend time counting all those increases in taxes that have happened in the last year and a half, from your license fees to, I mean, you know what those are. I think if you combine them into one, VAT really is at 18%. So technically for goods and services, you're probably spending about 18% right now because a lot of things have increased. So when you take away subsidy from pensioners for water or electricity, those costs goes up. So instead of me paying 16%, I may be paying 18% in a compound way. And the fact that they promised to cut the VAT. They realize now they can't cut the VAT. And if you add up their promises that they said they were going to do, none of those really has happened. So without those, without an economic plan, without an economic vision, they are now struggling to figure out, you know what, I've got to tax you. I need more money, boys and girls. I need more money. I've got to build more urban parks. I need that money. I'm not making any new money. Investors are not coming in our country. No new industries are going up. The construction industry has gone down, you know, in tens of percentages. I need money to run this country. So I need you to pay more. That's their plan. You know, in Parliament, you know, many of our MPs are saying, you know, you have to stop that. The fact that you cannot tax the system. We're becoming a tax nation. And when you have a tax nation, the economy becomes flatline. It is flatline right now. Banks stop loaning money. You know, you can't buy your houses anymore. You know, you're not getting the loans because you don't have the right jobs in order to pay the loans back. So it's a rippling effect that is transpiring now in our nation. And we've got to ensure that that doesn't continue too much longer. I can tell you under the PPP administration now as opposition, they're fighting for those programs to be initiated in Parliament. We're advising the best we can to ensure that the population does not suffer. It's not just about wanting power. And many believe, oh well, the PP want back in power. They can't do without power. It's about you look back now and you compare what was being done in the previous administration. And now you have the ability to compare to a new administration. And we're in the second plus year of this administration. Forget it about being new. You had 23 years in opposition to create your plans. You had 23 years to say, you know, you need the road to Brazil to be finished. You had 23 years to understand when you get into power what you would do. But instead, you come into power, you put all the guys that were out of the inventory, that left what they were doing back in the 80s, now got into power and they're trying to continue what they were doing in 1980. Let me tell you something, the administration, the world has changed. We have moved from the industrial age, we have moved from even the information age, we are now in the knowledge age. You cannot put 1980 politicians to run 2016 plus. They're trying to finish off what they started. I said many times with President Granger, you know, I respect his military service, but the fact, as an advisor to the former president, he knows of some things that were supposed to happen in 1980 plus that weren't done. He gets into power now and he believes, I've got to finish those off. The world has changed. Economics have changed. The industries that we need in our nation is not the same industries we had at those times. We have to keep refining. We were going to put $20 billion in the sugar industry this year to ensure the continual modernization of that industry. And it's not about spending money or $20 billion. It's about looking at the future and says, this is where this industry will be in 5 years. And you skate to where the puck is going, not where it is today. You know, if you were being interviewed by 2020 and they asked you, well, what did you do in 2016 or 2015 that Guyana had become a nation of prosperity? You need to answer that. This government would not be able to answer that question. The question would be, why did you screw our nation up? Why did you take what we had going, an economic status with 4+% GDP growth over the last 4 decades, positive growth over the last decade? Why would you want to stop that? So even if we achieve a percentage of the GDP growth, the fact that that is not trickling down back to our citizens, because at the end of the day, they need money now to sustain their expensive way of operation. They have, and people say, look, maybe they fix a road or two. Let me tell you something, a government, any government, whether it's a PP government, whether it's the APNU government, whether it's, the administration, anywhere else in the world, that's the job of a government, to fix roads, to build schools, to build the infrastructure of water and electricity and many other items. That's the job. That's not something good. They're not doing good. That's a requirement to be in government. When you say a government is doing good or better or excellent, is when they're putting initiatives in place that will increase the wealth of the nation and ultimately increase your wealth. Look how many of you in the last 5 years plus have been able to buy a car, or to move into a nice house, or get a higher paying jobs. What is it today? You ask many people around our nation, this is not about race, not about color, not about my hair, your hair, or creed or religion. It's about our economics. Without the right economic plan, what we're seeing today is a crime-ridden, developing component of our nation. I have a property right here also in Gaisuko Gardens. They had 4 robberies in one night. 4 break-ins in one night within an area that is small. We cannot continue to have a crime-ridden economy, because that will ultimately affect the economics of our nation. So our economic status right now is flat. It's flat, could be recovered, and we believe with us helping, and even in the opposition, I believe we have done a very good job at presenting in Parliament solutions that will make our nation better. Because when we take back the reins of government in 2020, we don't want to collapse the economy and start all over again. We want to ensure that the things that we believe that have put into place that were working and could work, and the new ones that will work, happen. So when you hear we preach about these transformational projects, but the Deepwater Harbor, but the road to Brazil, about moving the sugar industry to ethanol, about looking at the transportation economics of our nation to ensure that we can link Suriname, eastern Venezuela, northern Brazil. When you look at the energy, the Amalia Falls solution, eastern Venezuela may have bought the electricity, northern Brazil may have bought the electricity from us. Those are not pie in the sky thinking. Those are real economic planks that a nation needs to move from its current status to the next level. And that's why we used to call it we still call it version 2.0. We don't want to go back and have to fix version 1.0 in 2020. I'm very disappointed with this current administration that put 0 economic visionaries to run the country. President Granger is a great historian. I don't think he's ever run anything in his life. So where would he get an economic vision from? I asked him that question. He said, well, I've got good people around me. And I said, no, you've got a good accountant around you. An economist thinks of the country and how to take the country to the next level, not to figure out how to hoard the money or spend it on projects that doesn't make sense. I think the president did get upset at me when I told him that, and publicly I would repeat it. And then I overheard a statement he made. He says running a coalition is like pushing a wheelbarrow from the front. That tells you the leadership of our nation is at stake. And no one person, no group, cabinet have not looked at an integrated plan to say what the next step. Everybody's trying to talk about oil and gas. When you today are paying more taxes, you today are having less paying jobs, you're fighting to send your children to school because UG fees have gone up. You're fighting to pay the electricity bill, the blackouts that we're having. We're back to 1980. The fact that because we put 1980 politicians to run our country, guess what? We're going to live back in the 1980s. And what you're seeing is that a country that can go down if we don't stand up and says, we need to fix this. We as a people. Some people may not have supported the PP administration in the past, but I tell you, not one of them can tell you that the country was not better off under the PP administration than it is today. They may compliment the cleanup of Georgetown, and I remind them that Georgetown has been under the PNC leadership for 20 plus years. So why in 20 years, under the leadership of the PNC, Georgetown was not cleaned up? They're an independent body. Why give the government credit for cleaning up Georgetown? What happened with the people of Georgetown, the administration of the city hall that was in charge 20 years ago, 19 years ago, 18 years ago to current? What happened that they now cleaned up the city? You can't blame the PPP administration for not cleaning it up. You can't give credit to the new administration for cleaning it up. It's the city council responsibility to ensure the city is clean. So pat them on the back, but you should be asking them what happened, what were they doing for the last 20 years? They were intentionally leaving the city dirty in order to embarrass our nation. Simple fact like that. So we've got to move out of, I'm not a guy that just wants to say the bad things. I believe we've got to have the solutions necessary to make things better in our country. And I believe we as a political party in Guyana, in Parliament, we've got some of the best, sharpest young individuals that are helping some of the seasoned politicians. We've got a former president that I believe understands the economics of the nation, understands that Guyana needs to take risks. As a young country, as a small country, you've got to take risks in order to build the next level. You take a little money and you put it to the right project and watch it grow. Not go, I'm not going to do it because I want to be safe. I want to make sure that I don't collapse. I don't have money when the president says to build urban park, I don't have it. No. President Jagdeo will tell you need to take risks. You need to look at the Amalia Falls project and says, what would it have done 5 years from now? How would it change your nation? Is the investment worth the energy? Is it worth the hassle? Is it worth the repayment? Is our price for per kilowatt, would it go down? How would it improve our manufacturing sector? And you put all that into perspective and you make your decision. And when you make that decision, you put your metrics in place, you measure it, and you deliver it. And you continue to run the business of our nation. Not come into power and say, I don't like it, I don't want it, stop it, we're going to do other things. Where are the other things? If now they had an alternative plan for energy in our country, absolutely. Have we moved to wind power? No. Have we moved to solar power? No. Are we looking at ethanol, sugar energy, bringing energy from some of our waste material? No. None of that has happened. And you cannot say, I need 2 years, 3 years to figure it out. You've got to figure it out day one. Guyana cannot afford to be, you can learn on the job. We've got politicians, again, I call them 1980 politicians. They should have been out of the inventory. You know, when things get old, you put them on the shelf. They're out of the inventory. Do not put them back in power. They are not today thinkers. They don't understand why young people are so frustrated in our country today. Because Guyana needs jobs. We need to be developing value-added jobs. And young people today are upset. Many, I believe, did vote for APNU and AFC. And I know many of them that were colleagues of mine or colleagues of mine, that the biggest disappointment was the fact that the current government became in charge, discarded the youth that actually put them there, but not only discarded them, without the economic plan, stopped some of the progress that were happening, paid themselves bigger salaries, and what happened? You see, drive around any neighborhood and you can look at me straight in the eye, and if you can tell me two things you believe is better, that has made your life better today than it was 2 years ago, I'll be happy to hear that. And I'll apologize if you can tell me you have done better, that your financial economic status is better today than under the previous administration. And if you can tell me why, I'll apologize to you. And I may even give you the difference in what I'm saying is wrong. If it's wrong, that's how passionate I believe that our economy is sinking. And we need a revival in our economy. We need a revitalization of our industry in order to get there. We need our transformation projects to kick back in. We need investor confidence to be recreated. We need to stop this bickering at the top of the administration. I mean, the forensic audits have proven that, there's not a lot of things that maybe were wrong. Maybe, procedures, not everything may have been followed. If that's what you learned, then let's fix it. But the fact is, move on. You've paid the boys back. All the accountants that were on your side, that was critical of the previous administration, guess what? You've paid some of them $200,000-300,000 US to do a forensic audit. You've paid the big boys that have put money in your pocket to run the election. You've paid them back. The scandals that is happening one by one, we can just, hear, read, see for ourselves that is happening. You've paid them back. Okay. Let's call it even. What are you going to go do now to make our country better? Are you going to increase our taxes next year again? Are you going to put together an economic plan that can jump the curve now that you have put our country 4 or 5 years behind for the lack of 2 years worth of knowledge? What's going to happen? And I asked that question. I asked that question to the Minister of Education the other day, to my best colleague that I know very well, Mr. Trotman. I asked him directly, why is the economy? What happened to the plans that they were supposed to have to take our economy? And I can't say I got any answer that I can repeat, because I don't think I got any of the answers that I can tell you that I feel confident that our country will move forward. So we've got to look at the future. We've got to continue to help. As an opposition member, as a parliamentary candidate, I want to see Guyana better. I believe the PP administration has the plan. The plan is available. Many of us, those that are in parliament, those outside parliament, can sit down with the current government and guide them on some of these projects. How do you find money to do these projects? What is the negotiation skill set? When you put 1980 ambassadors around the world, who are they going to meet with? A 1980 ambassador cannot go and talk to the new entrepreneurs in London or in India. They cannot. They don't know what the new environment is. So how are you going to negotiate economic infusion in our nation through our diplomatic effort? Again, 1980 politics is what we have today in this current administration. Look around the cabinet. The few that are maybe new doesn't have any position. The AFC, I believe, has been discarded. I don't believe the AFC will exist come 2020. Not that is negative. The fact is they have not delivered on the things they say they needed to deliver. I was impressed when I saw the current Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu got an honorable doctorate degree. Those same people disagreed with President Jagdeo getting an honorable doctorate degree from a university. So the same things that they said were bad, the Marriott Hotel, many other things, they now realize that the PPP administration was doing good for our nation. And I believe giving credit where credit is due. I've criticized PPP administration many times in the past for the process and approach in some projects. But the fact is, they have proven every time with metrics that the fact that this project, X project, Y project has made Guyana better. And that should be our measurement for an economic plan. Does it make Guyana better? Is your increases in license fees or other fees, putting the toll back on the Linden Highway, did that make your life better? Where are you going to find that money? Where is it going to come from? Are you making new money? Is new industries created in Guyana? Is investors coming in like they were before? You know, we're lucky today that Guyana is going to survive this year simply because of our gold production. Every other industry has failed. And I hope for our nation that gold sustains itself over the next year or two, because we absolutely going to need it. And the whole foundation of our nation is now depending on this one sector. And this same one sector that they're going after the small miners. The fact that these are the guys that needs to continue to help roll the money over and over. Money makes money. We shouldn't be scared of money, because not everything is about corruption. Money makes money. The fact you invest in the right opportunities, you look at where you're going, you look at how your investment is going to do better, and you watch it. You do it as an individual right now. You put money in a house, you know at some point the value of that house is going to move from 5 million to 8 million to 10 million. Now we have seen property value drop significantly. Instead of it going up, it has gone down. But when you're investing, you know, if you buy a taxi, a car to run taxi, you need to know that you're going to make money enough to pay those payments. But if gas prices and other conditions are not in place, and you're barely making it, you may quit and try to do something else. The construction industry that has gone down has put a lot of people out of work. You know, you don't see all the buildings going up anymore. People says, well, what happened to the money? Well, there are many answers to what happened to the money. I think the business community is scared. The fact that the administration, heavy-handed approach to the management of the tax system, and I don't believe in cheating the system, but the heavy management of the tax system cause you to say, man, if I put that money and build that business and I'm going to be taxed more, for what? I'm going to put 100% and I'm going to barely get back 10% because they're taxing me 50% by the time I'm finished. I don't want that. I'm going to keep my money. I may take it outside. I may look at an investment in Costa Rica. Somebody may be doing farming in Costa Rica, and so I'm going to Costa Rica to invest. So we've got to look at how to retain our own people, how to retain our own money and keep it flowing in our nation, much less bringing in the foreign investors. Right now, I can tell you, if you look at the economic situation in our nation, you don't find major investors coming into our country. Nowhere in the papers have you seen in the last year and a half an investor that comes and says, we're going to build X in Guyana, like how you saw a year and a half plus ago, 2+ years ago, when Teleperformance and Paul Fon and all these other communication companies came into our country and said, we're coming in and build call centers. You haven't seen that. You haven't seen somebody coming in and says, well, we're going to put $800 million in an energy project like the U.S. firm had said they're going to put in to the Amalia Falls and fund it from different agencies. Even many of the agencies, external agencies, including the U.S., have said the Amalia Falls was a good project. Then why? Is it vindictiveness against the PPP? Is it vindictiveness against the people of our country that you will stop a project when you know that that project is going to make a difference in our nation? We've got to get past that. We as a people, regardless of race, regardless of color, regardless of the texture of our hair, color of our skin, our economic status, or religion, we have to develop our nations together. And if you're an APNU supporter, you've got to put the pressure on the current government and be blunt. President Granger, if you don't have a plan, I'm willing to give you version 2.0 of the PPP plan. I'm sure President Jagdeo, the opposition leader, would not say I said the wrong thing. We will come and we will help. We will develop. We will help make it happen. You don't want it? Then come up with your own plan. So you as an APNU supporter, you need to think through what you have put into place. You may have got the government of your choice, but you didn't get an economic solution that you wished for. The fact is, the next election is not too early to start thinking. What would be the best administration to run the economics of our country? You know, all of us live in peace and harmony every day. I don't believe we have significant issues around the nation. We live in peace and harmony. So what is the other component that really makes us angry? Is when we don't have money, or when we don't have enough to feed our family, or when we don't have enough to buy a house or drive a car. That's what makes us angry. We want our children to have a better education. So you've got to start thinking, did you make the right decision? I believe we have done a U-turn in our country. We have had a change in government. Many says change is good. And change sometimes makes a difference for the future. But you've got to now think of yourself. Did you benefit from the change? And if you did not benefit from the change, then your choice was not the right choice. What else did you achieve with the change? You've got a government that you like, maybe, that you thought would have done something different. I believe you've got to think forward. Project yourself 3 years from now, 4 years, 3 years from now, plus, and think through where Guyana will be in 2020. Would it have achieved what you thought a new government would have achieved? Did they deliver on their promises in the first 100 days? If it takes them 5 years to deliver on those cheap promises they have, then they have failed. So when they come next election, says, here's our promises, we have done it. Absolutely, they have failed. They had 100 days. They could have delivered on those promises. They failed. So you've got to measure them from now. And you've got to look at what you had before and what potentially you will get in the future. And each of us working together will do it. I think, again, the PPP parliamentarians have raised many of the critical issues in the bills in Parliament. But when you get shut down and the bills don't even be debated, how would messages like this get to you? I've now got to come on television and explain why certain things are not happening. You should be able to watch in Parliament at a true debate when we are able to say the things I'm saying right now. And if we can say those things in Parliament and debate what is the right economic plan for a country, debate why Amalia Falls project should not happen, debate why energy is not the critical solution for a manufacturing industry, debate why Deepwater Harbor is not started, debate why the road Brazil is not being started, look at the sugar industry, look at the rice industry. Those are the things that you and I want to hear our parliamentarians discuss. So when we're shut down from the debate, when they stamp that bill that says, there it is, go for it, that's not what I want. I want a nation, and you want a nation, and we want a nation that will deliver for us a vigorous economy, raise the flat line, let it start moving again, and benefit all of us. I will be discussing a lot more in detail in the near future on specific issues on the economy that I believe affect us. And I hope that you are part of that discussion, regardless of who you vote for. It's about our economic plans, it's about the vision of our nation, and who best have that rein or will willing to make some of these things happen. I look forward to having these discussions with you again soon, and I want you to answer the question, are you better off in the second year plus of this administration than you were 2 years ago? Could you name me 2 things or 5 things that you believe is better in your life than you were 2 years ago? And do you believe if you have them, or you think you're going to have them in the next year, do you believe that they will make a difference for your children by 2020? I believe our plan, the version 2.0, is a solid plan. Transformation projects, transport economics, energy solutions, growing more sugar to ethanol, producing more rice, cereal, value-added products, looking at our agri products, figuring how we can move them throughout the nation, feed the Caribbean, look at where we fit in the oil industry and what the next step is. That's the vision for a nation. And our politicians, our administration, this current administration need to get off. I'm not going to say what Trump would say, but they need to get off and do the business of our nation. Stop monkeying around with our nation and our country, and stop messing our well-being of our nation. God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon.